Hey everyone, welcome to episode 4 of Building Hoist. My name is Ben Deckroy and I'm really excited this week to have Thor Schaaf from Stripe with us. We're going to be integrating Stripe. Let's just get straight into it. I'm joined today by Thor Schaaf from Stripe in Singapore. Hey Thor, how are you doing?
Hello everyone. Hi Ben.
We're at a point now with Hoist where we got the login working in episode 1. In episode 2, I was looking at the Sanity headless CMS integrations. We've got our programs down here, and on the error page, I don't think I integrated them in yet, but we had our plans, which was in preparation for this video. And we have the plans pages now, which show you the subscribe button, which currently just alerts the keys. And we've got an account page that we had before, which of course I need to log in for. And in the last episode, I was working on an API, which ended up with me having this create customer button, which in users over here, this one's currently blank, but in users over here, if I click the create button and just refresh this, then it should give us a Stripe customer ID, which, as Thor will probably attest to, is not actually a valid Stripe customer ID.
That doesn't look right.
Doesn't it? What should we do about that? So that's kind of where we ended up at the end of episode 3. Today, Thor, we're looking at... do you remember what we're planning on looking at?
Yes. So we want to set up our pricing plans for Stripe subscriptions to actually allow customers to subscribe to a specific plan. For that, we'll use Stripe Checkout. And then we also want to allow customers to update or manage their subscription, kind of download their invoices, receipts, what have you. And for that, we can use the Stripe customer portal. And then one important thing, we somehow need to link the Stripe customer ID to our Auth0 ID. And that's what we're using the app metadata, I think it's called, for.
Yes, so that's this part here. So Auth0 does provide this mechanism for storing data against a user. And one of the reasons we're using the app metadata, it says in the little description down here anyway, but the user metadata can be updated using the logged in user's JSON Web Token, whereas the app metadata can only be updated by a system that has specific access to do that. And in this case, the API that I wrote in the last episode uses a machine-to-machine, it's a machine-to-machine application in here. So we've got this one here, the dev API, and that's allowed to update it, which means that we can store things like the Stripe customer ID in there, but and knowing that the users can't go in and modify that.
For the user metadata, I can modify that from the client side. Is that correct?
Not necessarily from the client side. I mean, if you were to hack together a curl request and you grabbed your JSON Web Token out of the browser and you could update it that way. If you were writing an application and you wanted to store stuff in the user metadata, then from your React application or whatever the front-end Angular single-page application, because you've got the user's token at that point, you could even make a request directly to the Auth0 Management API to say, hey, update Ben's preferred color to blue. Okay. Because the risk of that being, I mean, that's something that I'm doing as a user anyway. The risk of some malicious outcome from somebody changing that is very low, whereas the risk of malicious outcome from somebody changing the Stripe customer ID is a lot higher.
Yeah.
So that's why we'll be storing that in the app metadata.
Okay, cool.
So we've got our two applications over here. We've got Hoist, which is the Gatsby app, and we've got the API, which I was just hacking with a little before. We've got that working now, and the way that this works is we have this get management API token, which is the machine-to-machine thing. So this allows us to get a JSON Web Token for the API, which is acting as a client, talking to the Auth0 Management API. And with that token, this is basically a simple Express app. When we call this manifest Stripe customer endpoint from the React Gatsby app, we're getting that management API token, and then we're making a call to the API here and passing in the app metadata. So that's essentially all that happens in this application. I've got a note here already. This is something we're going to be doing today, is updating this part here to, instead of passing in the sub or the subscriber ID for the user in the JSON Web Token, we're going to be passing through the customer ID from Stripe. So where do you think we should get started, Thor? I guess the first thing is to create a Stripe account, right?
Yeah, definitely. We can just spin up a test Stripe account. I think if you just find the Start Now button somewhere or sign in, yeah.
Now. There we go.
Many buttons lead to the dashboard. And then, yeah, if you just provide your email address and a password, we don't need to activate the account to start developing. So to create a test account, really only what you need is an email and a password, and then you can, well, and a name, and then you can start developing.
Oops, that's my password. I was typing in my surname, and I was thinking, why can't I see it?
Oh. Yeah, please don't use your surname as password.
Yes. All right, so let's use that password there. Doesn't want to let me use it. There we go. Sure, we'll save that. Create account. It asked me for the full name. I realized that I hadn't typed my surname into the right place, and I still only put in my first name.
That's okay for now. You're once you activate the account, it'll ask you for some more information.
Perfect. All right, that's good. I can see I'm already making some money here. That's great. Already some sales.
It's projections. Yeah, we believe in you.
Excellent. Good. I like it. Support from the beginning. All right. So we'll want to create the payment plan then, I guess.
Yeah, let's do that later. I think the first thing that we can do is you showed it in the backend code where we want to insert the Stripe customer ID. So I think we can create the Stripe customer ID just once when a user signs up. And so maybe let's start with that. And to do that, we will need our secret API key, and similar to the Auth0 Management API key, we need to put that into our environment variables.
Okay, great. So I go into settings for that?
It's in the developer setting, developer section.
Developers. Yeah. All right. API keys.
API keys, exactly.
There we go. So I need to copy both of these in?
Yes, so the publishable key is what we'll need on the Gatsby side of things, so in our front-end project. And then the secret key is what we'll need on the on the API side of things, in the Express API. Yeah.
Sure. So this one is the public one, so we'll actually put the Gatsby underscore in there so the React app gets access to that as well, right?
Correct, yeah. We'll need that in our front-end code, so we prefix it with Gatsby underscore.
So we'll put that in there. And then this one here, we put into the, let's just save that, into the API. Let's come in here. Now we'll create a Stripe, what was it called?
Secret key.
Secret key.
And that gives you a hint that you should keep it secret.
Excellent. That will be blurred out in the video.
Yeah.
All right. Great. So we've got those in there now.
Cool. So if you go back to your API route.
Yep. Come into here.
Where we... so I think this is a hook. Is this a hook when a user signs up, or how does this endpoint get called?
So currently all it is a button
okay.
that's on here in the account area, which was basically just a way of getting the token in to test that the API is working.
Gotcha.
We'll probably want this to be done at the point at which either when the user creates an account in the first instance, or the first time we need a customer ID. Because of course we've always got the JSON Web Token in the Gatsby application. So we could defer to the point at which we need a customer ID. Maybe we put that into a hook of some sort. And then when we get it the first time, we'll say, is there one? If not, then we create one.
Yeah, so we could do that kind of just in time, basically do like a create or retrieve type function. Or, yeah, alternatively, we could just create an empty customer object at the point when the user signs up with Auth0.
Yeah.
But so what we'll need to do here is we will need to require the Stripe node library. That's sort of the easiest way to make API requests to Stripe from our node backend. It's actually just called Stripe because that's the only library that's the only node library that's on the npm registry.
Right. Okay, let's install that one then. And then we'll need to include that at the top, I guess.
Yes, so we'll need to require Stripe. And we can actually say, we can initialize it right there with our secret key. So I think it's actually...
Should we go over to the docs and have a look?
Yeah, it's funny. It's like I copy and paste that code snippet so many times. But yeah. Or if you go to the create customer in the API reference, I think it shows you the chained one.
Create customer.
Yeah, so if we look at the customers, create a customer, it gives us the complete code snippet. Yeah,
there we go.
And so we can just chain the...
So should we just copy that?
Yeah.
So we'll paste that in there. This is going to be the
Stripe secret key.
That one there. And this we can move down into our existing method. So we're getting the, let's look at the order here. We've got the API key and we get the user out. At this point here, this is where we're writing the user. So we need to know beforehand.
Correct.
We have the token. So here we'll want to create a Stripe customer. And here we'll be saving Stripe customer ID to app metadata in that order.
Great.
Okay, so in fact, this is the success.
Correct. Yeah. So there's different ways you can use this. So the Stripe customers create function returns a promise, or you can hand it a callback function. So kind of depending on your promise, async await, or
so maybe
your
what
style
we'll do
of
is make this
JavaScript.
one asynchronous.
Yeah, I think that might be the
although
easiest.
It's actually this function in here.
True. Yeah. So I think if you just put async in front of the data, and then maybe bracket that.
Bracket. I was missing.
Yeah. So many ways to do a function in JavaScript.
Too many. So const customer.
And then we can just await that, and we can
wait.
Actually, we don't need to pass in a description. We can create an empty customer object if we want. We could provide an email address if we wanted to. Maybe what actually would be nice if we provide some metadata and write the Auth0 user ID to that metadata.
That would be good.
Because
so can we just make anything arbitrary up?
Yeah, so the key is just metadata, and then you pass in an object with a key value, and then we can say maybe auth0 ID or something. The great thing with that is we index it in the Stripe dashboard, so you can actually search for your customers in the Stripe dashboard using your auth0 ID, which is pretty neat.
That's great. Yeah, that'll probably save in the future if there's any questions from a customer support kind of perspective as well.
Exactly, yeah.
All right, so we've got that coming back as an await. So now at this point here, we've got our customer. So in here, we just do customer. Do you remember what it is off the top of your head? Or should we jump back to the
.id.
Oh, it's just the ID.
Yep,
perfect.
That's it.
So let's just save that, right?
That should be it, yeah.
All right. Surely not. Do we give it a try?
Let's try it.
Or is there anything else that's missing? Let's try it. Okay. So first thing I need to do is start the API again. And this one, the Gatsby app doesn't need to be changed because we've not done anything in there, so we don't need to restart Gatsby.
Correct.
So let's just jump straight back in over here. And I don't even need to log in and log out because I've still got the JSON Web Token. So let's just hit create customer to see what happens. Of course, we don't have any logging at the moment, so we're assuming a best case scenario. So theoretically,
fingers crossed,
this should now change, right?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, then we can start doing some debugging.
Should be a CUS_. Hey,
how easy was that?
That was great.
That was 4 minutes? Great.
After post, it will be 4 minutes.
Indeed. All right, so we've got our customer created in, let's just jump over for fun and have a look at this customer. So this customer's just been created. There's no data in there, not in the initial view, but here we've got our Auth0 subject.
Yeah,
that's great.
Brilliant.
Lovely. All right, so we've got a customer. And so, how do we allow them to subscribe now?
Yes, so maybe if we jump to the Stripe docs for Stripe checkout.
Stripe docs for checkout?
Yeah, so this is the API reference. So if you just go to stripe.com/docs. So the reference kind of, Stripe docs gives you a bit more of a guided sort of documentation. And then we can go to checkout in the left menu, and we want to set up a subscription in the very left menu. Here? Yeah, or that one works. Start with the guide. Exactly, and so you can see we already have our server-side Stripe library set up. We can select Node here, so we've done that part.
Yeah. We've done that bit.
And the next part we need to tell Stripe, because with Stripe subscriptions, Stripe will automatically charge your customers based on your defined billing schedule. And so we actually need to tell Stripe what that schedule is. And we do that by creating products and prices in the Stripe dashboard.
Okay. So one thing that I was thinking about in episode 2 when I was integrating Sanity and putting data in is I included the price in Sanity, because from my perspective I want to render that for that's content, but I was thinking to myself at the time as well, that's like the authoritative information is in Stripe. If I change the price in Stripe, then that's obviously what's going to get charged regardless of what I've got in Sanity.
Correct.
So just as an aside, would you recommend putting stuff into Sanity as well, or relying just on Stripe? Or is there I know Stripe's got a whole lot of hooks to make your life a lot easier. Is there one that I could listen to, perhaps write some kind of way down the track when I've got thousands of people managing the system? If somebody comes along and changes the price, it automatically pushes the new price into Sanity. What's the best recommended course of action? Yeah,
I think so. Kind of the fanciest bit to get everything synced up is you can use webhooks. So we send webhooks when you update prices, when you create prices, and you could point that webhook at Sanity or at your application to then actually update your product record in your database. So I think that might be sort of the most connected approach. Another approach, of course, you can create and update prices via the Stripe API. So you could say my source of truth is my database. And when I change things in my database, I then send API requests to Stripe to update the record there. So it kind of depends on your approach. With Jamstack applications, sometimes you want to say, hey, let's just be Stripe, kind of the source of truth, and then use webhooks to rebuild my site with that new information. So that works as well.
I can see as even more of an MVP process. At the moment, I've already got a headless CMS built in. But if you wanted to set up a brand new Gatsby site with just Stripe and Auth0, you could probably do 100% of everything just using app metadata as your database, Stripe as your source of truth for everything billing related, including pricing. And you don't even need a headless CMS at that point, do you?
Correct, yeah. So there's actually a Gatsby e-commerce tutorial that I've helped write that uses this approach where at build time, it pulls the data from Stripe and then basically generates the static pages with that information.
Brilliant. Cool. Just as out of interest, do you support GraphQL, or do you have a module that converts that? Like, how would you build that in Gatsby?
So there's a Gatsby Stripe source plugin, which is built by the community, really cool. And that is, very easy to pull in objects at build time.
So you get a GraphQL interface within your Gatsby application, but you're still using the standard API from Stripe.
Correct.
Perfect. All right, back to it. So we're not going to worry with webhooks for now. We'll just put the pricing into here again. So we need to set up some subscriptions, yeah?
Correct. Let's set up some products and prices. And
so
maybe if we
first
check the data model in Sanity real quick to have a look what we have.
So over here we have our plans, and essentially we have 4 elements, I think, 5. So name, slug, description, price, and the pricing plan ID.
Okay. Great. So we have 3 different, in Stripe terms, we would say 3 different products. And then every product can have multiple pricing plans. But generally what you use the pricing plans for is, so every pricing, basically every currency and frequency combination has their own pricing plan. So if we say, 10 Australian dollars per month, that would be one pricing plan. But then maybe we also want to offer it in USD and Euro. So that would then be another pricing plan. Or if we want to offer a discount for a yearly subscription, then we would, create 100 Australian dollars per year, for example. That would be another pricing plan.
Okay, cool. In the event that you wanted multiple currencies but didn't want to manage the conversion all the time, I'm assuming that if I just set everything up in Australian dollars, then somebody from the US can still pay in US dollars.
Correct.
Or are they going to be billed in Australian dollars and then their credit card converts it?
Yeah, sorry. So in that case, they will be paying in Australian dollars, and the conversion will happen on their issuing bank site. We're working on a way to make that easier for you to actually have kind of automatic multi-currency support. But for the point in time, you have to specify every currency and frequency combination
and manage those rates yourself.
Correct.
Yeah. Fair enough. All right, let's jump back over here then and create some products.
Yes.
So we want what did I call them? I think it was just single
couples and family
couples. Single. So how much information in here do you need? Obviously, the optional tells me that that's not required.
Correct. So the optional description is useful for Stripe checkout as well as the customer portal, because we will show that description, on your receipts, invoices, emails, so what have you. So it does make sense to provide a description. You can also provide a custom statement descriptor. So this is the information that shows up on the customer's card statement or bank statement. And then the unit label, I think if you're, I'm actually not sure myself. So if you hover over the, how you sell your product. Okay, yeah. So if you have a seat model or, so you can say per seat or per
box or per carton or per bottle, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right.
And then again, metadata. So we can generally provide metadata for any Stripe object that we can create. Something we could do here is if we wanted to associate a role with this subscription. So if the customer subscribe to the subscription, they get a specific role in Auth0. We could do that here, but I think in our case they don't get specific access or anything.
Not at the moment. Well, maybe down the track, and maybe we can have another session and go through that.
Cool.
But yeah, good to know for other types of products. Pricing. Okay, this is the exciting part.
Yeah.
So just whack our numbers in.
Exactly. So if we have kind of a standard pricing model where we charge something per month or per frequency, then that's kind of the easiest. There is more sort of complex pricing models, and I think if you go to the Stripe docs, there is some information in how you can basically translate your business model to the different Stripe pricing plans.
Oh, I love these little arrows here to go through different tooltips.
Cool.
That's very cool. So package pricing is if you do 25 per 5 units. Okay, yep, that makes sense. I don't know why somebody would want to buy 8 if they're going to pay for 10 anyway. Graduated pricing is, so the more you buy, the cheaper it is for the next set, whereas volume is the more you buy, the cheaper each item is.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean, people do have crazy business models, so
I'm sure.
I always like, to keep the business model simple. Maybe that helps customers also.
Definitely. Yeah, you don't want to make it hard for people to understand whether or not they want to invest in something.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going for monthly. We don't want to offer them a free trial. Anything under advanced options we should look at? Just the description.
Yeah, we could set a price description, but I think that's not needed here because we have the description for the product. So that should really be all we need. Yeah.
So this is where we'd go if we wanted a different currency, I presume, adding another price.
Or a different frequency, like yearly. Yeah.
But we'll just save and add the couples.
Yep.
What did I just set up? Did I set up couples? I think I set up singles.
Singles, yeah, I think. And then
so couples for the couples plan. I think I added in. So the statement descriptor, does that already include anything that I can define elsewhere, or is this the only place where I can describe what goes into the statement?
No, so you have your overall business settings. So you have sort of a main statement descriptor that you can use for all your business. But what you could do here is you could say hoist couples as statement descriptor to actually specify, for which plan they are being built. To customize it a bit more.
So if I set my company name to Hoist, that would already be in here. So essentially here, the statement would say Hoist.
So it overrides, basically.
Okay, Good to know. All right, so we've got our 3 products now. Let's just save that last one. Right.
Brilliant.
Looking good.
And so now we, because we don't have the webhook build step, we kind of manually need to copy over the price IDs to Sanity.
So that's this one here?
No, so that is the product ID. Specifically, what we need here is under pricing, exactly the price ID. Got a little button there.
So that's single. Let's come in here and update that. And couples. And these are publicly shareable bits of information, aren't they? There's no secrecy to the pricing ID, I assume.
Correct. So that is kind of the client-side identifier for your pricing plan. And it's unique to your Stripe account, so it's not secret.
Perfect. All right. So I'm just restarting Gatsby. I know we're going to do some more work in Gatsby in a second, but we need to rebuild at some point anyway the Gatsby app to pull out the new information from Sanity. So theoretically now we should be able to confirm this works by refreshing this page here once the build is finished. And then when we click on it, we should get the new ID.
Get the alert, okay.
There we go. And here we have our new pricing ID. Lovely.
Brilliant.
All right.
So now probably what we want to do, instead of alerting them with the pricing ID, we actually want to let them subscribe.
Good plan. Let's take some money. Where do we go now?
So we can go back to the checkout docs guide. Yep. And so we've done creating our products and prices. So the next step, what we'll need to do is we'll need to create a checkout session for our customers to then point them to Stripe Checkout. And so we need to do this on the server side. So
that'll be in our API.
Yeah, in our API, a new express route to maybe say create checkout.
Sure. So let's just be lazy and copy this one. And we'll have checkout create.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, I think, so I personally would make it a post route because we need to send the pricing ID along. And we also need to send, I think, the JSON token along to be able to then find their customer ID from the app metadata. Is that right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay.
In order to get the JSON web token, or the data from the JSON Web Token, it's probably going to be better to talk to the management API directly.
Yeah.
There's two ways we could do this with Auth0. We could write a rule or a hook in the Auth0 interface that'll allow us to take that app metadata out, or even parts of it, and put it into the JSON Web Token payload, which is one way we can get that information in. And because the customer ID isn't sensitive, not hugely sensitive, that's something that would be okay. It's generally a good idea not to put passwords or secret keys into the payload, because they're not actually encrypted. They're just base64 URL encoded. But the more you put into the payload, the larger the overhead of every request to the application is, because that JSON Web Token goes into the top of every request. So we'll probably do, and we only need to do this once when we create the session, the checkout session. So let's go to the management API, pull out the user's metadata that way, and then use that to... So the first thing we'll need to do is get the management API JSON Web Token. And then we'll do some stuff with that token. We're going to need to do a request at some point, so I'm just going to take this out and stick it up the top. Doesn't like something around here.
Are we missing a closing?
Close that one.
Yeah.
There we go. I always know when I hit Control Save and it doesn't pretty format it for me, something's missing.
Same.
All right, so we've got our JSON token here. So the next thing we'll need to do is make a request to the management API at Auth0. So let's jump into Auth0 itself and let's have a look at how we will do that.
Have we looked at what the get management API JWT function does?
We can go through that again here. So what we're doing is we're making a request to the Auth0 domain. So for this application, we've got hoist.auth0.com. So that's our tenant. So our tenant, each tenant has its own management API. And on that, we're making a request for a token. And because there's as I showed before, there's a machine-to-machine application. So the API in this instance is actually the client. And it's making a request for a token from Auth0 to be able to talk to the management API.
Okay.
So over here, we've got the APIs. The management API is what we want to talk to. We've got the application, and the dev API is what wants to make that request. So the API is actually configured in here to authorized. So the dev API as a client, so an OAuth client, is authorized to talk to use a JSON Web Token to talk to the Auth0 Management API as a provider, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So we're basically making that request to the OAuth token. We're passing in the client ID, client secret, and the domain.
And then we get a short-lived token to...
Audience, rather, not domain. Okay. And then we get a short-lived token. Yeah, so that gets sent back as the response from the promise.
Brilliant. Cool.
So what this does now, it gives us a JSON Web Token, so we can then make requests as we do down here, again, to the same domain, but we can now talk to the user endpoint. So the /API is the management API for our environment.
That's great.
So in fact, we want to copy this almost exactly, because what we're doing is we're going to do a GET request here on users, and this we don't need to provide a body. This by itself, once we make the actual request, should just return us the entire user object.
With the app metadata, right?
We're making a change, and it should include the app metadata.
Brilliant.
So what I'm going to do, let's just jump into, should we go into Gatsby app, call this, and then the response should be the user's information. So maybe we'll use that as a slightly more complicated console log.
Okay.
Let's go back to here. If we could look at the accounts page, this is the create customer button we had before. So let's just override this one, right? All right, so create customer. We're getting the access token from the Auth0 module in Gatsby now to get the user's JSON Web Token. So this token here is my token as a logged in user, which allows me to make a request to the API that we're writing. Don't need to log that token out anymore. Let's just do a start or create session.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can just duplicate this. We'll call this one create session. So instead, we're now going to call session create. And it was a, can't type, method post.
And then we also need to specify the application JSON
Yes.
data type.
Actually, that's not a header. That goes in there. Method post headers is content type.
And then we can send along a stringified JSON body.
Yeah. And in there, we're going to pass in the Stripe plan ID. Is that what it's called?
The pricing plan ID.
Pricing plan ID, which for now, we'll just put that in because we don't have that on this page yet. All right, so we've got that call happening now. Let's just see, and that's rebuilt. Let's just see what that does at the moment.
Just to make sure.
We're not doing anything with it though.
In our Express backend, are we parsing the JSON input? Do we have a body parser?
Good point. We haven't done any of that yet, so we better pull in the body parser.
Yes. Yeah, I think if you just Google body Express JSON body parser. Yeah, it always surprises me that that isn't set by default with Express, but it probably makes sense. You know, some want form URL encoded things. Some want JSON.
All right, there's a whole lot of documentation here that will probably help. So we want the body parser, and we'll want to do this one here.
JSON, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, all right, so let's just install this one. And then we'll grab that and put this the top here somewhere. I always look at all the vars and imports and users at the top, and they've got to obviously come in the right order. You can't use app before it's defined.
Correct.
But it always seems messy to me. I'm never quite sure. I like my code to tell a story, and sometimes it just doesn't tell a story.
Yeah, I always struggle, like, how do I group the imports? I sort of try to have some logical grouping, but yeah, it's sometimes it's a challenge.
Add the body parser in right after it's loaded, but app isn't loaded yet, so I'll put it down here.
Yeah.
And then maybe I should pull in cores just before I use it. App is probably the most important thing, and then Express. So this probably tells a nicer story, and maybe that's more of an include.
Yeah.
So we've got an app, got Express, we're adding cores, we're adding the body parser, then we pull in Stripe and the authentication stuff, and we need a request at some point.
I like that.
There you go. All I need is a bit of pair programming to work out a story.
We could also put the Stripe, pair the Stripe with the request import rather, because Stripe is mainly making API requests, so you could move it down to where you require a request. I like that.
All right. Okay. Looks like a good story. Cool. So we've done that. Let's just start the API again. Oh, it doesn't like something.
Ooh.
What have I not done? Express. See, I've broken it now. Express is not a function.
Not a function. Oh, yeah, require. Yeah. So much. Now it's a story with a headline.
Now it is. Okay, that's looking better. Right. In the great tradition, let's just click a button and we should get something in the console log. So let's clear this. Create a session. That's a good start.
You can just check the network tab, can we?
Can. 404 create.
What does
Session
it say?
create. What did I call it? Create checkout.
Checkout create.
Not session. Yes.
Gotcha.
All right. So back into this one here. No. Create checkout. And checkout create. And create. Why doesn't it give me the one that I just typed?
That's a good question. Maybe because it wasn't saved?
Maybe. Who knows? Alright, back to the browser. Shouldn't need to reload, just hit create checkout. Got create, post, 200.
200 sounds good.
And we get
a
400 response. So this is the response from, let's jump back into the API. This is this response here. So that's to the Auth0 endpoint. We're getting 400. I'm passing the token in. That's that token there. Let's just have a look here at what's in token to work out why that's not working. Need to restart, and we'll just hit that button again. Come back here. The token we're getting back, it's an object. Okay.
Gotcha.
So that's obviously not going to work. So let's call this data, and we'll say that the token is equal to data. What are we looking at here?
Access token. Access token.
All right. I need to restart.
Yes.
I always forget to restart Express.
Yeah, right, yeah. There's like Node 1 or something kind of auto restarts. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a stream coming up soon with one of my colleagues who lives over in Colombia.
Cool.
And he's planning on helping me go to NodeMon and also move things to TypeScript and all sorts. So that'll be a fun one. But we have over here now our user object, which includes our app metadata.
App metadata, fantastic.
With the Stripe customer ID. Wonderful.
That's what we need.
So in here, I wonder whether we should make this, because we're starting to get quite nested now. I'm wondering whether we make this here
an await.
An await, or do we just put it in? Let's just continue. It's just as good. So we've got the body here is JSON. So body dot app metadata dot Stripe customer ID.
Mm-hmm.
So that should pull it out for us.
And then the price ID we had in the request body, I think, right?
Yes. Let's have a look at the request we made here. And then we've got Stripe pricing plan ID.
Cool.
And that'll be coming through in request.body. So let's just do another console log here and see where we're at. So we want an array. The customer ID and request body dot
Stripe pricing plan ID. Yeah.
I don't think there's anything in between the body and that. Oops, missing the E.
No, since we have the body parser set to JSON, that should work.
Okay, let's restart and give this a try. So we've got beautiful.
Lovely.
Right. So having this now,
we can create the Stripe checkout session.
Yep. Which I copied before, but we don't have anymore. So let's just jump back over here.
Mm-hmm.
Was it this one?
Yep. So we already have the require, so we can ignore that, and then you can just copy that whole bit. And then we need to input a couple things. So price we will need to set to the pricing plan.
It's not liking my indentation.
No, the problem is the async await. So the function isn't async. Yeah, I get that a lot. There should be a warning for it, right? Like when you say the S code should shout, you're missing the async.
All right, sorry. What do we need to change here?
So we could specify multiple different payment methods if we wanted to offer different ones. Like in Europe, you have
do Bitcoin.
No, not anymore. It's more an investment vehicle than a payment vehicle.
True.
We found. But so Australian backs direct debit, I think it's called. So debiting a bank account instead of a card. We might want to offer that. But so what we need to change is the price. So the price ID we have in a request body pricing plan ID.
This one here.
Yes. And then also a top level attribute is customer. So customer, we want to pass in the customer ID. It is not mandatory. It is not a required attribute. So if you don't pass in a customer ID, what Stripe Checkout does is it creates a new customer for you.
Yep.
But since we already have the customer and we've got that linked up to our Auth0, we set here the customer ID. We got the mode subscription and then success URL and cancel URL. So the way Stripe Checkout works is we actually redirect to a Stripe hosted payment page. And then we need to specify two URLs. So one is the success URL once the subscription sign up and payment was successful. And the cancel URL if someone says, hey, actually, take me back. So I think since we have a single page application here, we can just point those at the account page, for example.
All right, let's do that there. That there. Now, I don't know whether in our environment variables we have one set up yet. We should probably have a Hoist
client,
website, which we will put that bit into. So then here we can just do process.env.hoist website. Make it easier to put into production.
Yep.
All right.
And that should be it. And then what we need to return. So the session object has a session ID, so session.id, and that is what we need to initiate the redirect to Stripe Checkout. All right.
So would we return just the whole session? Would that be useful? Or would you specifically return just the ID?
The only thing really we need is the session ID, but there's no harm if we wanted to show folks what's in the session object.
Let's have a look just for the experimentation purposes. All right, so let's restart the API, jump back over here, clear our console. So we're not really creating a checkout anymore. This is actually going to fail now because the ID we're passing in is foo. So what's Stripe going to do with an ID it doesn't know anything about?
It's probably going to throw an error.
Let's find out. We should probably have a look over here. We do have an error. Is it the error we're expecting? Receive unknown customer ID. Was that meant to be just customer?
Yeah, it's just customer. Sorry.
Okay, that's all right. You did just say customer, but then I saw customer ID as one of the suggested pop-ups. I thought, it's...
Oh, yeah, because you have the variable, right, called customer ID. Yeah, so the nice thing is actually when you convert this to TypeScript, so we ship types with the Stripe node library, meaning you pretty much don't have to look at the API reference anymore because it basically is in VS Code. So that's really cool.
Yeah. So we do have over here no such price foo.
Yeah.
So let's move this button onto the other pages.
The plan page, yeah.
So we'll probably rename it as well. Let's copy that and paste that in. Actually, it's called subscribe already. So I'll just remove these bits. And we're being passed the whole plan. So we'll get the plan in here. So we want to output plan. In fact, I've got it here already.
Stripe pricing plan ID, yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to alert that anymore. So we're calling what we had in the other page when we click on subscribe, and the plan is being passed into subscribe. Hit save on that. Get access token silently is not defined. Let's just It doesn't want to auto pull that one in for us. So let's just come up here and make sure we have these. We need the user. It's not being used. Let's get rid of that. And we need to pull in use Auth0 up here from our helper. All right. I don't need to rebuild this. I always have to think to myself twice, do I need to rebuild Gatsby? Because the GraphQL hasn't changed, all the data's there, we're just using it in a different way. So this is hot reloadable. If we come back here now, still only accessible from the 404 page at the moment. We'll jump into the single plan. Now we've got the subscribe button. So theoretically, we should now get a redirect, I'm guessing, to Stripe.
We should get a checkout session, but we're not yet redirecting, I think.
Okay, so the post is there. Did we get a response? Doesn't look like it. Let's have a look at the API logs and see what's happening over here. So in order to use checkout, you must set an account or business name. Right. Let's do that.
That's a classic one. I wonder why it doesn't prompt you. So if you go to the settings when you create your account, and then there is your business information at the business settings at the bottom, and then you click on account information. Oh, also it looks like there's an add a name at the top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this one here. Oh no, that's something else.
Anyway.
That one.
Yeah.
So if I just do that one,
that should work.
That will then reset. I'll just do a refresh of this page. So I haven't submitted this yet. Let's just see what's happened there.
That should be set.
Yeah. And that's the only thing we need to do to continue?
Yes.
Theoretically?
Correct.
All right.
Yeah, because checkout needs to know, because checkout shows your merchant name, basically. It needs to know what to call you.
All right, so let's try subscribe now again. And we're not getting... there we go. We've got our object returned.
Yeah, and so the ID that you saw there, the CS underscore, that is the one we need to then redirect to checkout. So that is the next step. If we go back to the docs, that is the redirect to checkout. And so here, there's actually a React tab. If you scroll up a little bit.
Yes.
Yes.
Lovely.
And then we can use the...
So we need to install this one?
Yes, the Stripe.js wrapper. So that really is a wrapper for the client side Stripe.js library to allow you to import it as an ES module. Yeah, the important thing is that so Stripe.js always needs to be loaded from the Stripe servers because of PCI compliance and such regulation. You always want to make sure that you get the newest script and don't host anything yourself.
Can't be modified by somebody else.
Exactly, and then really what we do here with the Stripe.js library is Stripe.js actually collects some information to do fraud detection scoring. And then when we call the redirect to checkout, what happens is we attach the fraud signals that were collected to the Stripe checkout session to then evaluate the fraud score in total.
Okay, that's awesome. So that's installing in the background, probably done. So I'll need to bring this part in. And this goes into the page in React from which we're doing the redirect, right?
Yes, I think in React we can do some optimization. So sort of the costliest piece of initializing Stripe checkout is to load and initialize Stripe checkout. Yeah. So if we pull that out into a singleton util function, that might be great because you want those lighthouse, you want to hit those lighthouse scores,
Totally. All right, so a new Stripe.js file in utils, and we'll import load Stripe.
Correct, and what basically load Stripe does, it returns a promise that then resolves with a Stripe object. So if we just have a variable that we say let Stripe promise, and then we just create a get Stripe function. And in the get Stripe function, we just evaluate if Stripe promise already exists. So if, or we say if it doesn't exist, so if not Stripe promise, we want to say load Stripe to create the Stripe promise. So Stripe promise equals load Stripe. And then load Stripe, we need to pass the publishable key, which identifies us with our Stripe account on the Stripe API. And I think we have the Gatsby underscore.
We do, that one there.
Variable there. We can just put that in.
That one.
Exactly. And then the get Stripe function needs to return the Stripe promise. And then as a module, we just export the default get Stripe. Yeah, that's great. So by having the singleton, we make sure that we always only instantiate Stripe once across our whole Gatsby site, no matter what route we're loading or what component we're in. So that gives us peace of mind.
Really, really important in a single page app, as you said before, because there is never a reload, therefore it never goes out of memory.
Exactly.
So I imagine if you didn't have this, if you had a lot of sessions with a checkout, I assume that I probably only ever have one or two with most customers, but you still wouldn't want that to happen, just in case, I guess.
Yeah, and also you want to make sure that you don't initialize it before you actually need it, so it doesn't affect your performance when just your load performance, for example.
Yeah. So in our case, if we'd follow the documentation, we'd add it in at the top of the plans. Every time you went to any plan page, you would pull it in.
Correct.
Which isn't required. Yeah. All right. So down here then, we need to pull that Stripe promise in, get Stripe. But we only need to do that if we actually subscribe and we've got a token.
Yeah, so we can do that in the click handler.
Which is this one here. So at this point here, that's where we're doing the console log. Oops. So let's change this to be another function call. So at this point, we'll do get Stripe, which should have pulled it in automatically for us. Yeah.
And at this point, the JSON is the session object, right? The checkout session object.
Correct. So the JSON is the thing that looked like. It's gone now, but yes.
Brilliant. Yeah.
There we go. So we'll want JSON.ID,
just
ID, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
There's nothing else in there. So what I'll call this actually is checkout.
Yeah, and we need to await get Stripe. So get Stripe returns the Stripe promise. So a promise that will resolve with the Stripe object. And then async, yeah.
Lovely.
And then we can just say await Stripe.redirect to checkout.
And we pass the whole check, or just the checkout ID in there, or is it an object?
So checkout.id.
Suppose I could look at the documentation.
Sorry, we need to pass in an object that has a session ID parameter.
Right.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, not session
it should
storage.
be checkout.id.
Checkout. Thank you.
And that should be it. And so redirect to checkout does return an object which could include an error object. So yeah, well, since we're using await, we would
of course.
Yeah, basically just destructure const, destructure error.
It's an array or a...
It's an object that might have an error object. Yeah. And then we could basically check if error is not undefined exactly, then we show a warning. Really, the only time that would happen is like if the checkout session ID is incorrect, or if the network connection is gone, or things like
Sure.
that. Yeah.
Is there a, can I see what an error looks like? Do you have a breakdown on what kind of elements will come with it?
Yeah, so
but
if
obviously
you...
it's going to be hard to fake.
If you go at the top right, we have the Stripe.js reference, so you can click through to that, and then it should, I think, if we go to redirect to checkout, you scrolled over it, sorry.
Oh, I typed in /, which is, it works here as well, which is Firefox's way of jump to like find text, but also allow you to enter.
Yeah.
But it looks like you have your own.
Yeah, we hijacked that. Yeah, that's it.
Nicely done. Right, so
I think if we the result, does it give us the returns?
Promise and error message field.
Okay, it doesn't show an example.
Let's rather than console logging for now, let's just do an alert of error.
Alert.message, yeah.
Message. All right.
And that should be it. Do we need to rebuild?
I'm not sure because we didn't change any of the Gatsby stuff. It should get a.
But we installed libraries, right? Or
we did, and you know what? We didn't actually start it again. Minor detail. There we go. Right. Hit subscribe now. And we've got this. We've got a redirect.
All right.
Lovely. So here. So presumably now by providing my email address and already having a customer ID, Stripe's going to add those in for us?
I believe so, yeah. And so if the customer, for example, has an email set on the customer object, it would already be pre-filled there.
Okay, great. All right, so just hit subscribe. Let's see what happens.
Okay,
got a tick. Got a redirect back to account. Lovely.
And so if we check the Stripe dashboard, maybe we could go to customers. Yeah. So now you see the email.
And subscriptions, we should have one.
Yay!
Active, single. That's great.
Brilliant.
All right. Okay, well, you've mentioned the portal.
Yes.
And presumably for an MVP type application like this, where we don't want to design our own, we've got an accounts area already, and we could list in there what plan they're currently on. So we could build that all into this page here. But obviously, that's a whole lot of time, and one of the things that I always mention when people ask about Auth0 is that it's a great way of allowing you to focus on the business, on the logic of your application. This actually makes a point of difference. And for Hoist, we're not going to get a huge benefit from writing our own account management system. If we can offload, maybe down the track, maybe if we want to brand it more nicely, but if we want to offload that onto Stripe, what does the portal allow us to do, and how do we integrate it?
Yes, so if we go to the Stripe docs and switch over to home and then the billing section on the left, navigation, so there should be billing, so there should be manage subscriptions and then customer portal. So to manage subscriptions, that's it. And so there's a screenshot of what that can look like. So you can customize the color, kind of branding, and your logo and business name. So customers recognize that they are still, interacting with your business. And then we have the integrating the customer portal guide on the left. If you was kind of the sub nav there. And so that is what we need to do. So the first step, we actually need to configure the portal features and UIs in the Stripe dashboard to go to the portal settings. So there are a couple things we can allow a customer to do in the portal. So for example, allow them to view their billing history and download invoices and receipts. allow them to change or update their payment methods, also update subscriptions. So if they wanted to switch to a new tier, a new subscription, switch from monthly to yearly, what have you. And then also we could allow them to cancel their subscriptions, which might be a useful feature. And then we can always decide whether we want to employ proration. So do we want to make changes immediately and prorate kind of based on the point in time at the moment, or do we want to wait until the end of the billing period? So things like that.
So for something like Hoist, which is more of you're not really buying anything, you're donating to causes, we don't want there to be a refund mechanism, really. So we would cancel the end of billing period, I guess, so there's no prorated. In terms of the updated subscriptions here, what does the prorated subscription do? If I went from a $10 plan to a $20 plan, for example, does that just charge me the difference for the month?
Yeah, exactly. So it would calculate the time that you have left. So for example, if you subscribe halfway through the month, you basically have a credit of $5 that are then credited against the new subscription plan.
Right. So if I turned this off, for Hoist's particular case, if I was on a $10 month and I billed 2 weeks ago, and I've now changed the $20 a month, then nothing's going to change until in 2 weeks' time, I'm then charged $20. Is that correct? So I think for our use case, probably disabling, not doing prorated subscription updates is more relevant.
Appropriate, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Great. And then we need to select the products that we want to allow them to switch between. So this is when we allow them to change their subscription plan. We can select all the
choose them all.
Different plans.
Yep.
Exactly. And then there's some information. We need some terms of service and privacy policy. Those because it's basically a sort of checkout page when they switch between plans. So we need to link those.
So is it going to check to make sure these exist? Because they don't yet.
No. It's going to trust you that they exist.
Lovely. Is it worth providing the default redirect link? Presumably that's what we've been passing in.
Yeah, we could do that. So we could specify it on a per request basis. So anytime we create a short-lived redirect access link, or we could set a default here if we wanted to.
So we put it to
for example
account.
Yeah.
But then presumably if we pass that through as part of the request, that would override it.
Correct.
This just being a default.
Yeah.
All right, let's save those.
Brilliant. So that should be all configured now.
On this page. Lovely. Back to here.
Yeah.
So we've configured the portal.
Exactly. And then what we
log
can do is implement redirect. Let's do that.
So it's remembered that we're using Node. That's nice.
Yes. Yeah. So we kind of need another route. I think we can just copy the checkout create post route. It's very similar to that.
So checkout create down to here. I think that was everything. So instead of checkout create, it's going to be portal create.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. So we've got our token here. I'll probably at some point maybe want to cache the token.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be long-lived enough for it to cope with a couple of requests, but we'll leave that there for now.
Gotcha. And then
call this one instead.
Again, we need the customer ID and the return URL if we want to override it.
All right. So that's this bit here. Let's just paste that in there. So the customer ID we've already got. And the return URL, we'll just use the default.
Although, wouldn't we want to set it to localhost at the moment?
I think you're right. Yeah. I was one step ahead already in terms of configuring Stripe.
Yeah.
What's called that one there?
I think we have the process.env, do we?
Yes.
Then we don't need to change it later.
Hoist website.
Nice. Cool. And then we have
API,
a portal session. And again, yeah, that should probably be
Just
it.
return that.
Yep.
All right, so let's jump over to here, into the accounts page. We don't need this one anymore, because that was the one passing in foo.
Yeah, let's
just reuse this one.
Let's recycle that.
So I want to open portal, going to get the token, going to do a portal create. Let me just come down here and change this. So let's just have a quick look at the docs again, I guess.
Yeah, so the session that is returned has a URL. Oh, you scroll over. Yeah. And then that is where we need to redirect to.
Just redirect them to this one.
Yeah, so we can do that either on the server or the client. So we could, redirect directly in the Express endpoint if we wanted to. But I think in our case, with the single page application approach, let's get the session back and then do a window location assign.
Okay, so in this case here, that session secret, that's passed back in the response. It's
Correct.
not something we need to add in. Okay.
Yes.
Cool. So this bit here, that's going to be portal. And what was it you said, sorry?
Yeah, we can do window.location.assign
yes.
portal.url.
And that's it.
That should be it.
You're making our lives way too easy, Thor.
We try.
All right, accounts, open portal. Let's click on that.
Open Sesame. Oh, unexpected.
I didn't restart the API.
Ah, that makes sense.
Let's do that. Try again. There we go. Navigating to. There's a whole lot of error in there.
Ooh.
Yeah, all right. So let's just hide that. Now that's perfect.
Great. So there you can see your billing history, and I think you can click on that too at the bottom to get your receipts and invoices. So you can see when you signed up, there is this invoice. You can download it as a PDF for your records if you wanted to. And then if you go back to the portal, you can update your plan, you can cancel your plan, and you can also update your payment methods.
That's awesome. So it tells you already that you're going to start paying that there. There's no mention of pro rata because we disabled that.
Correct.
And I click there, then I can select a different card at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Too easy.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's good.
It should be all you need to get started in the beginning.
Indeed. All right. So one last bit of information I'd like to put in, not sure whether it's something I can do out of the box, is to have a bit of text on here just saying which plan I'm currently on without having to go into the portal. Is that something we can do?
Yeah, the correct way of doing that would be to store that information, so the currently active subscription plan for a user in your database. You could potentially also write it to the app metadata if it's not too much information. Sure. But I think ideally you'd want to have it in your database. And then the way you would synchronize that information is Stripe has webhooks to update you when things change. So actually, if you go back to the portal documentation, there's a section, if you scroll down, about the webhooks you should listen to.
Yes.
And so kind of the most important one there is the customer.subscription.updated hook. So anytime they update a subscription in the portal, this webhook event is sent to your application, and then you would extract the information of what are the changes that were being sent. And in most cases, the change would be the pricing plan that they updated to. And then you would write that to either your app metadata in Auth0 or your database.
Sure. All right. So we'd essentially be caching that outside. Stripe would always be the source of truth, naturally.
Yeah. I mean, sort of in my ideal world, an ideal Stripe integration would actually never need to make a GET request to Stripe. But yeah, that might be a bit of a utopia.
Maybe one day. Awesome. Well, I think we've come really far today. We've got the portal built in. I still need to add some links in so you can actually get to them easily, but from our plans pages, we can now subscribe. We've got customers going in. We've even got that link now between the Auth0 user and the Stripe user. So now when I log out and log in the future, we can always pull this out and we know exactly who's logged in. And like you say, there's a whole lot of stuff that we can add to the database. But ignoring the content stuff that we're doing in Sanity, technically we've got an application here that's using just Auth0 and Stripe for a complete donation management system, which I think is pretty awesome.
No, I think this is really great. Having the app metadata in Auth0, linking that, using that as kind of a linking mapping table with the Stripe customer ID, I think that's really powerful stuff.
We'll have to get back together again in the future for another stream, another session. Maybe once the database is in place. I think you've mentioned that before as well. And we'll do some funky stuff with the webhooks, see how they work.
Yeah.
But for today, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for your help today. Hey, are you a web developer? Do you care about security and privacy? Are you interested in the Internet of Things? And what about videography and streaming? Well, these are just some of the things that I talk about on my channel. There's a couple of videos over here that you might be interested in, but until next time, thanks for joining me and have fun.